pulling the bowl out of Stanley's hand. "Tripper, are you crazy?" Stanley roared. It was poisoned," Jack lied. "I realized the wine was corked. It could lead to 2. Instant baldness." Stanley touched his thinning hair and turned white. "Get out! Get out of here!" Jack beat a hasty retreat. Later that night, Stanley told Helen that Jack's French stuff was delicious, but the boy was clearly losing his mind. He asked Helen to get the recipe, noting that the stew she made usually wasn't even fit for a dog. Chapter 5. The Coward of the Pub. The masculinity of Jack Tripper was a constant theme in Apartment 201. Because he was pretending to be gay, Jack often felt he had to overcompensate, or, conversely, he felt like he was losing his edge. One Friday night, the trio headed to the local pub, the Regal Beagle. It was a wood-paneled dive where the beer was cold and the social stakes were surprisingly high. A large man, whose neck was wider than Jack's waist, began bothering Jeanne and Chrissy. He was a classic bully, a man named Moose who seemed to enjoy the sound of his own growl. "Hey, Blondie," Moose said, leaning over Chrissy. "Why don't you leave these losers and come for a ride on my motorcycle?" Jack stood up, his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Excuse me, sir. The ladies are with me." Moose looked Jack up and down. He laughed a deep, rumbling sound. "With you? What are you gonna do? Hit me with your purse." Jack froze. He looked at Moose's fist, which was roughly the size of a ham. He thought about his teeth. He liked his teeth. They were essential for tasting his beef bourguignon. I think we should just go," Jack muttered, sitting back down. The girls were silent as they left the pub. Jack felt 2 inches tall. "You did the right thing, Jack," Jeanne said gently back at the apartment. "He was a monster. I was a coward, Jeanne. A yellow-bellied, chicken-hearted coward." For the next 2 days, Jack was a shell of a man. He practiced karate moves in the mirror, but he kept accidentally hitting himself in the ear. He tried to grow a mustache, but it just looked like he'd gotten some chocolate on his upper lip. Determined to reclaim his honor, Jack went back to the pub alone on Sunday night. He saw a man sitting at the bar who looked like the bully from the back. Jack marched up, tapped him on the shoulder, and prepared his best tough guy speech. "Listen, you big creep, I'm Jack Tripper, and I don't take lip from nobody. If you want a piece of me, let's go." The man turned around. It wasn't Moose. It was a much smaller, much older man who looked absolutely terrified. I'm sorry," the man squeaked. "I'll leave. Don't hurt me." The man ran out of the pub. The bartender looked at Jack with newfound respect. "Ho, Tripper, that guy was a legendary safecracker. I didn't know you were so tough." Jack puffed out his chest. "Well, you know, a man's got to do what a man's got to do." He returned to the apartment and told the girls a heavily edited version of the story. For one night, Jack Tripper was the king of Hauser Street. Chapter 6. The Case of the Missing Rent. The final crisis of the month was the most dire. In the world of 1970s apartment living, rent was paid in cash, and the deadline was absolute. Jana had collected the $300 and placed it in a white envelope marked rent on the bookshelf. Don't touch it, she warned Chrissy. That's our lifeblood. I won't, Chrissy promised. An hour later, Chrissy took the broken transistor radio from the shelf to the repair shop. In her typical whirlwind of confusion, she moved the envelope to keep it safe and then immediately forgot where she put it. When the trio gathered that evening to meet Stanley, the envelope was gone. It's been stolen, Jana cried. The door was unlocked. We've been burgled. Jack searched the apartment. Nothing else is missing. Why would a burglar only take the rent? Are they paying their own landlord with our money? In a panic, they decided to fake a real burglary to convince the police and the landlord that they weren't just irresponsible. Jack turned over a chair. Jana scattered some papers. Chrissy threw a lamp onto the sofa. The police officer who arrived, a cynical veteran named Miller, wasn't impressed. So, Miller said, looking at the neatly overturned chair, a burglar broke in, didn't take the TV, didn't take the jewelry, but found a hidden envelope of cash and then left quietly. He was a very specific burglar. Jack argued. Right, and I'm the King of England, Miller sighed. Look, kids, don't fake a crime. It's a felony. Just tell your landlord you lost the money. They were terrified. Stanley Roper was coming up the stairs. They could hear the heavy thud of his shoes. Tripper, rent, Stanley yelled, pounding on the door. They opened the door, ready to beg for mercy. Stanley walked in, looking smug. I came by earlier to fix the sink, Stanley said, and I saw an envelope on the shelf. Since you kids are always late, I figured I'd just help myself. He pulled the white envelope from his pocket. The trio stood in stunned silence. They hadn't been robbed by a criminal. They had been pre-collected by their own landlord. You took it? Jana gasped. Of course I took it. It's my money, ain't it? Jack started to laugh. Then Jana. Then Chrissy. They laughed until they cried, much to Stanley's confusion. What's so funny? Stanley grumbled. You kids are weird. I don't know why I let you live here. But as he walked back downstairs to Helen, he had a small smile on his face. He had the rent. He had his safe tenant. And he had a building full of life. Upstairs, Jack poured 3 glasses of cheap wine. To the roommates, Jack said, raising his glass. To the apartment, Jana added. And to the next $300, Chrissy chirped. Wherever they are. They clinked glasses. The sun set over Santa Monica, casting long shadows across the floral wallpaper. They were broke. They were living a lie. And they were constantly on the edge of disaster. But as the laughter echoed through apartment 201, they knew one thing for sure. 3 was definitely company. Chapter 7, The Dinner of 1,000 Grunts. True to his word,